You are watching News Watch at 5:30, and we're still here at Lang Pioneer Village, and that's a two-harness loom. Two-harness loom. And we've got him working on it, showing us how it's done.
Yes. That's Clark Stanley, one of our interpreters. And he's doing a rag rug, weaving a rag rug on the two-harness loom that will be part of our exhibit at our Samuel Lowry Weaver Shop, which we're currently building. Yeah,
so you're building this weaver shop, and how did that come to be?
Well, we have in our collection 2 rare Jacquard looms, and back in 2003 we were looking at the feasibility of restoring them. We found out that there's only about 7 of them in North America, and we have 2 of them, and so we decided to restore the looms, and when we did that we determined that we're going to need an environmentally safe place to put them. And it wouldn't fit well in any of our barns, so we decided that we would build a combination 19th century Victorian home and weaver shop, and we would display both our two-harness loom and our original Jacquard loom in the weaver shop portion of that, and we have built a replica for active demonstrations of the Jacquard loom that'll be in our interpretive center, which will also be a place for people to learn about textile arts like spinning and weaving.
So what is, I guess, the big question, what's the difference between a two-harness loom and a Jacquard loom?
Well, a Jacquard loom is the first practical application of the binary code. And those of us who can remember back in the 60s, computers used to have these punch cards. A combination of solid areas and holes, which would basically determine what the program was. Well, that wasn't invented in the 60s. It was invented in the early 1800s by a guy named Joseph Marie Jacquard in France. And what it did was it revolutionized the whole weaving industry, because up until then, it was a 2-person operation. They had someone called a draw boy who would change the threads and make the pattern different. But the use of these cards allowed them to reduce their workforce by half by just having the weaver do it, and the cards would adjust the pattern. And the cards were so intricate that you could reproduce a photograph in a tapestry on a Jacquard loom. So it was a revolution to the whole weaving industry, and Joseph Marie Jacquard was given the Legion of Honor from Napoleon for his contribution to French economic development.
That's so neat. Napoleon. And so this will be finished. Everything, people will be able to see the Jacquard looms in action when?
It seems to be a moving target. But, we're just halfway through the construction of the building. And once that's done, we start the exhibit. So we're looking at probably late fall, early spring before the building is completed. And then we're going to bring DDA Sports, who restored both of the looms, back to the area to reassemble them in the building. And then from that point on, we set up the exhibit. So it probably will take another year. So we're hoping that we'll be able to open the exhibit late in the 2011 season.
The Jacquard looms also are local, have a local element to them?
That's right. They were owned by a guy named Samuel Lowry, who worked out of Warsaw and Peterborough from the 1880s to the early 1900s, until such time as he couldn't compete with the weaving mills that were in existence at the time. And it's quite impressive to think that he was using technology that was developed in 1804, right up until 1905. And then he had to sell the looms or give the looms in trade for back rent, and he left the area. But a lady named Dee Dee Mose acquired the looms back in the 60s and donated them to Lang Pioneer Village in 1973.
Wow. 1973 you had them, and now you're finally seeing them put to use. Perfect.
Right. It took 30 years to determine that we wanted to restore them, and it's been the last 7 years working on restoring the individual looms and building the weaver shop.
Fantastic. I can't wait to see it all come together. And I'm sure you can either, since you've been working on it for quite some time.
Yeah, it is delayed gratification at its most extreme, I guess. But hopefully in the next 2 years we'll have everything up and running.
Fantastic. Well, we have to head to another segment, and when we come back later on in the show, we're going to find out all about Heritage Weekend coming up.
That's right, the Fur Trade and our Heritage Celebration Weekend.
Yeah, sounds neat. All right, but first we're going to send you now over to Mr. Graham Hart and Tracy Kashuba with another installment of Grammar for Grown-Ups.
There's an awful lot of red on that board for this edition of Grammar for Grown-Ups. Now, Graham, brung, brought, bring, and the correct use of which of those words?
Well, we're going to cross out brung right off the bat.
You can't even stand to see it on the
that doesn't
board.
Happen.
So for those of you who thought you brung your best to the job, you didn't brung it.
You haven't brung it.
And you haven't brung it. Look, he can't even say it with a straight face.
Well, this happens because of hang and hung, for example. And so we carry over these ideas into other words. But in this case...
What do you mean hang and hung?
Well,
what does hang and hung have to do with brung?
Well, hang and hung is correct. But bring and brung is not. So bring is equivalent to hang, and this is the current tense.
Yes.
And present tense. And brought is the past tense. And have brought is the past participle. So we have hang, hung, he has hung is the past participle of that too. So are we getting a little too complicated?
No, that's
here?
good.
Okay.
Brung is out of the picture. Bring is current, present, brought, past tense. Hang, current tense. Hung, past tense. Hanged, is that anywhere in there? Hanged?
Hanged has to do with
he
the
hanged
hanging